Been a while since it felt like this. Been a while since it felt.
And today our special guests are Jordan and Dorothy Bewernick with Great West Radon. And November's Radon Action Awareness Month. And Jordan and Dorothy own Great West Radon, which is a family-run business providing radon testing and mitigation services in Calgary and area. And radon is becoming a topic that is more and more known in the real estate community in Calgary.
So the easiest way to talk about radon and describe radon, odorless, colorless, tasteless gas, really comes from our soil, the breakdown of uranium deep within the soil. And radon is really coming out of the ground all the time, but it's really a man-made problem when it can come into the house through the various gaps, cracks, and voids in the concrete slab, where it can build inside of the home to sometimes some very high, very hazardous levels. So, the old thinking that, one neighbor tested in the cul-de-sac and his levels were low, and therefore the whole street would be low, is a total myth. And every house has radon. We know that for sure. It's just a matter of how much. You could have very, very little levels that wouldn't never warrant any action. But then the opposite can be also true, where you can have extremely high levels that well exceed all of the governing bodies for thresholds for what's acceptable, and you would never know it until you test for it. So that's why it's so important to test.
So this is an odorless, colorless gas that is the second leading cause of lung cancer, or the first leading cause of lung cancer, non-smokers.
When you hear about radon, it's usually from someone that you know and you trust. And that's the number one way people find out about it, is they heard from a coworker, they heard from a friend or a family member, and literally telling them to test could literally save them or their children's lives 100%. So it sounds superhero-y to say that, but it is very, very true. It can save lives long term.
Yeah, there will come a time, how far down the road we're not sure, but we'll look back on these days and say it's crazy that we lived when nobody knew about radon and not too many people tested. It's, I cannot tell you how many people we hear from never smoked, never abused their lungs, and go in for standard checkup because of a cough maybe that won't go away. And in the end, they find their stage 4 lung cancer. And these are not older people. Like we think often lung cancer, they must be a smoker and they're probably in their 70s or 80s. But these are people that are in their 40s and sometimes even 30s, 30 years old, having never smoked, getting diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. And that, the oncologist will say, have you tested your home for radon? And they say, what is radon? And there starts a conversation, and we get the phone call, eventually get them a monitor or some sort of testing kit, and they test their home, or maybe not their house that
or
they're
their
living
parents' house.
Exactly, they test the home that they lived in or were raised in, and that has high levels. So it's something that when we look at in Canada, the deaths, just in general statistics, Canada, radon in Canada kills more people than drowning, than house fires, carbon monoxide poisoning, car accidents combined. Yet,
carbon monoxide too.
Not enough people are talking about it. So it's about starting the conversation that radon needs to be tested in the homes, and that's really it.
If our little baby toddlers are going to be playing down here, then we want it as safe as possible. So we decided to mitigate.
Well, they'll be down closer to the ground than you will be, right? If they're crawling around down there and
just playing, running, huffing and puffing, right?
Just children in general, the studies show that, they breathe 2 to 3 times as many times as we do. So their respiratory rates are higher. So they are at more risk, and they've got the longest life left to live. And that's really the big determining factor. We'll talk about that later, but it's, the cell damage caused from radon when they're 5 years old and 10 years old. If they live to 90 years old, that's a lot of still DNA level damage. Because once, again, we'll talk about this in a moment, but once it gets into your lungs, it continues to emit radiation. So, the less that we can have ourselves and our kids exposed to, the better, as early as possible.
World Health Organization suggests that anything over 100 is when you start seeing that DNA level damage at a higher risk. So the Evict Radon organization, based out of the University of Calgary, that does all the research and all the statistics that you see generally are referring to research that they're doing. And they also say that between 1 and 200 becquerels per cubic meter is considered intermediate risk. Under that threshold, so under 100 is considered low risk. And then anything over 200 is considered high risk. So for every 100 becquerels that you are increasing in these levels, you start seeing a significant increase in the likelihood of getting lung cancer long term.
To put it into perspective with, let's just say, use X-rays and cigarettes, for example, because we can understand that a little bit better than becquerels. But Health Canada says 200, right? They say if you spend on average about 12 hours per day in the home over the course of 1 year, 200 becquerels equates to 350 dental X-rays per year worth of radiation. Whoa. Or about 11 and a half cigarettes a day at 200. And the worldwide research, really not only from the University of Calgary, but really around the world, really says that cell damage starts to become measurable in the lungs starting at 100. So
November is actually also Lung Cancer Awareness Month. So because radon is the leading cause of lung cancer in non-smokers, those two things go together. So it's lung cancer awareness and starting to test in November for those 90-day kits, I'm sure we'll touch on shortly. That's when November would be a great time to start those. They're a competitor of ours, but they're great friends of ours because they're just nice people and we're all about just, being friends with them. There was the one house, it was just off of Crowchild on the way out to Bearspaw, that the university actually had to come test, and it tested at 160,000 becquerels.
160,000 was
160,000 like that. They were, I was going to say that there must be like a massive chunk of uranium under that house somewhere, because
there's actually digital monitors that are failing in that house because of the high radiation coming from that house.
Yeah. That's a record one that we've heard of. Like, we didn't do that one personally, but our friends did that one. So
they say that 1 in 8 Calgary homes test above 200.
I feel like
if the house is newer, and they say newer as 1992 or newer, it goes up to 1 in 6. And then if you use the World Health Organization numbers of 100, then it's 4 to 8, right?
Yeah, 50% of them. 50%. But I feel like those statistics might even be a little low because those were from a while ago. So I'm curious. The issue is that when they produce statistics like that, people almost like hide behind them a bit, and they're like, like, I have like a 16% chance or something like that. So that it doesn't provide that urgency.
Just
so they almost
the dice, right?
Yeah. It's like, like I'm most likely going to be the 5 out of the 6. Right. So they almost don't want to put statistics out there like that. It's just changed. The discussion around it has changed. They just want more people testing. But like if you care about the no risk, like if you want to avoid risk altogether, especially for kids, half of Calgary homes, people like you are awesome that will take time out of your day to record all this and ask the right questions and have people listen to it. It's so valuable. Just if you got one person a test, it would be worth it, and we really appreciate that.
The common, exactly. The common one-liner we hear is, I wish we would have known. I wish somebody would have said something, because then we could have done something about it, but they just didn't know about it. So you don't know what you don't know.
Regardless of what method you choose to test your home with, the most important thing is to know that radon levels fluctuate from day to day. So a long-term average is what you're looking for. That's what Health Canada recommends. Evict Radon researchers recommend. So there's 2 ways. There's a long-term test kit that you can purchase that requires you leaving a little passive device out for 90 days or more, up to a year. You leave it usually in your lowest lived-in level in like a breathing zone. So we always like to make sure people are putting them on like a bedroom nightstand or maybe a coffee table in a place that you watch TV, or in a gym, family room, that sort of thing, right? You leave it there for 90 days, then you put it back in the envelope, send it to the lab. The lab analyzes it, they email you your test results, and then they tell you what your results are. most people, when they find out there could be a cancer causing gas in their house, they don't want to wait like the 3 or 4 months that it takes to do that 90-day test kit. So the alternative to that is the digital monitors, like you mentioned, Jesse. So those digital monitors work the same way in the sense that you want to be leaving them in your lowest lived in level in those same spaces, breathing zone. And then those will start giving you preliminary results within about 24 hours. And then the longer you leave them, the more accurate they become, gaining that long-term average. So some of them will fluctuate with daily averages, or there's an app involved that will show you and track your radon levels on a nice graph for you. Some of them show glow red, green, yellow, kind of like a stoplight system where they're letting you know what your air quality is based on those colors. A lot of people will buy these digital monitors like you did, and they're able to share them with family and friends, which is like the best way to find out about what radon is. It's like, hey, there's this gas. You can Google it if you want, do your own research. I tested my home. I got it all fixed up, but here's my monitor. If you want to test your home, there's so many amazing people that we have mitigated for that are just great advocates. Once they find out what it is, they want to protect their family, their kids. There's grandparents buying test kits for the whole family, and it's just a great way of being able to do that. The digital monitors are able to be reset, shared. They have warranties for 5 years. They're usually good for up to 10 years. You can test a lot of homes in 10 years.
So you have to have an idea of the market you're dealing with as a buyer and plan your strategy accordingly, right? So you're not setting yourself up for disappointment where you're not getting any house, right?
Exactly.
And your strategy may change to just be like post-purchase testing versus pre-purchase conditional testing, right? Like
100%.
Like let's say someone gets their report and they say, look, it's 350. I'm not comfortable with that. How do you guys what would you do from that moment to them having it all fully mitigated and they're happy and their levels are down to a level that's say under 100?
Yeah, so typically either they can call the office and get a free no obligation quote appointment booked, or they can hop online and they can book a quote themselves. And basically, I'd come out to the house and we'd look at make sure that the test was in the right location. Number one, and get a little bit of information about the house, walk around the house, have a look at the mechanical room, and basically just go through the mitigation process with the homeowner, and then provide them with with a quote, and basically they can
we have a pretty good online system. What
Yep.
we've over the years, we try to make the whole process as simple as possible. We don't want anybody getting like overwhelmed with the process, and we know that people have a lot going on, so we don't need to add to any sort of confusion or stress. So they book a quote online, it goes through our system. Jordan shows up, walks them through, like you said, tells them where he would most likely want to put the system. They say they're okay with that.
Yeah,
They get their
so in the quote takes about 15 minutes, so it's not this couple hour deal that can be in and out of the house in 15-20 minutes depending on how many questions.
Exactly. And then they get their quote online. They have a link that they're able to check, as soon as they're ready to proceed. They approve their quote online. They get sent a booking link so that they can pick whichever date they want to mitigate. And a lot of our, systems are all paperless. We remind people about their appointments. It's a pretty seamless process.
Nice. Now the mitigation, is that a 1 day visit, or is that say takes a few days to do typically, or like
No, typically for the vast majority, 99% of homes can be done in a 4 to 7 hour window. Typically we run in two-person teams. We arrive at the house generally at around 8:30 in the morning. And by the time we're done our diagnostics, which is first, that's kind of the smart part of the system. That's where we understand the pressures and understand all the flow rates and calculations. And that really, we build the system on an app that we made. And then from there, we move to step 2, which is our physical install. And then once the install is done, then we kind of move and we do some optimizing and seal different gaps and cracks that are able to improve the efficiency of the already installed system. And then we basically clean everything up. And within, like I said, a 1 day deal, your levels are usually less than 100. And then typically after day 3, they're less than 50. And then the long-term averages are are typically less than that. A lot of them are even between 10 and 30. Even the guys that are
Well, that's quick.
starting at 2,500 becquerels to start, and ending between 10 and 30 or less than 50 is a great improvement and considered success in our industry. So,
Well, it's a very new thing because for many years, when people would ask, is there financial aid or anything of the sort, we'd always have to say no. But it's very exciting for us to now be able to say that Alberta Lung does now provide financial support in the form of these grants. We provide a link to them in our quotes so that you're able to access that right away, because we know sometimes people don't want to share their financial history with us, which is totally fine. But you can qualify for up to $1,500 of these grants through Alberta Lung. For either low income situations, or if you are somebody who has been diagnosed with lung cancer or has been affected in the family by lung cancer, you can qualify for up to $1,500 through Alberta Lung. And it's a really easy process. You hear from them really quickly. It's not this like long drawn out like months. Like we've had people apply the 1 week and they were able to approve their quote the following and have their mitigation done relatively quickly. So it's a great program. The CBE tested schools, day homes. If you're a parent that has a kid in a day home, get that day home tested if they haven't tested already.
there was a day home that we mitigated.
Yeah, we just recently had a gentleman that we've been in contact with many times just over his whole situation. He was feeling so ill. He spent his whole life, he was like ex-military, he stayed in shape, he has a gym in his house, and he moved and he just felt sick, like so sick all the time, headaches, nausea all the time, like this whole slew of terrible symptoms.
And he during the install, sorry to interrupt, he was sitting on there on the couch, and he was looking quite sad. And I had asked him, I said, "Is everything okay?" He says, I'm just so thankful that you guys are here, because I was thinking for so long that all this hard work that I've spent literally decades of my life eating healthy and working out and all the stuff that we're supposed to do, and here I am in my senior years feeling so ill that I don't know what I did wrong.
Yeah, and he had gotten an MRI, CAT scan, blood tests,
neurocognition tests.
Yeah, there was like literally the list of stuff that he had gone through over the years that he had moved into this house was absurd. And no one could figure it out. Not one doctor could figure it out, but he was adamant that he feels ill, and he somehow came across radon testing. He gave me a call. We were discussing, and I said, well, on occasion, there's actually 4% of the population that is inherently radiation sensitive. So even if your levels aren't crazy high, you'll feel sick from it. And I was reading to him the symptoms of radiation poisoning, and he said, Dorothy, like, this is everything I have. He's like, I want to test immediately. So we send him a monitor and he starts testing. And within 2 or 3 days, I think his levels were 1,750 becquerels. And he said, I think this is it. He's like, let's do this. Let's go forward right away. I need to get this house mitigated. Jordan and the team goes out there. They do his mitigation for him. Within 24 hours, he called me and he said, all of my symptoms are gone. And he is now on the radon crusade. He's like, if you need me to do a video, he wrote me this big letter documenting his entire thing. We did a blog post about it because he was so passionate about it. He's sending me emails and CCing his family members. Everybody get your house tested for radon. You've all heard my struggles over the past year with my health. They're all gone now. My levels are low. My symptoms are gone. And it's great. He's like so happy. He's got a new lease on life. He feels like himself again. So it's so great. That's a great story.
Wow, that is a win. That gave me goosebumps hearing that. I mean,
there's been a number of people that have had quote unquote uncurable diagnoses that they just are ill for no apparent reason. And sure enough, they have their house mitigated, and it's probably, I can count on both hands.
Yes. Yeah.
How many people have said
I felt crazy.
Incurable migraines are now gone. It's so it is possible, and it is quite astounding to hear that. And I'm so thankful that we get to be a part of that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the key takeaways would be test your house, test your properties, right? Because
absolutely.
whether you spend approximately $50 for the one-time use, or you borrow a monitor from somebody, or you do the 96-hour test, just get that. I mean, for peace of mind, anyways, that's what I'm taking away from this, from what we're talking about here, is like, know what your numbers are. And once you get that number, research it and make sure you're comfortable. Maybe somebody is comfortable with 350 or 500 or something. I don't know why they would be, but like maybe they are. But if you've got young kids too, right? It's important to do that for your family, do that for your children, right? Because they've got a lot of life left to live, and then and call you guys for mitigation if they do have those higher levels, right? Because it sounds like you've got a pretty good streamlined setup to be able to help people and make it easy. So, I mean, everybody's busy, and maybe they are a little light on the finance side. They can finance it through that company there, or get a grant, and you guys can really make it easy for them on a one day kind of stop there. Well, it's touching hearing that story. I mean, you guys, it's got to be a rewarding career there that you folks have built for yourselves.
It is. We're growing. I'm part of the CNRPP Real Estate Council. We're doing a lot of work to partner with realtors like yourself to try to get the awareness out there, because we know how much people trust their realtor, the relationship realtors have with their clients. So we really want to work with realtors to educate home buyers and sellers and everybody so that they know more about this. We're research partners with the Evict Radon organization, so that we're able to work with them to get stats out there and build information that they're using for their studies and statistics. It's just great work. We're happy to be doing it, and we're growing. It's good.
Yeah, the education is so key, and it's just getting that conversation started is so important, because it can save lives. And it, even if you're not diagnosed with lung cancer, look at the stories we just mentioned. You don't have to have lung cancer to be negatively affected.
That's
your
right.
quality of life is impacted by radiation, and if we can eliminate that and restore vitality to people's lives, we are happy to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right on. Well, you want to make sure you're working with whoever you work with. You want to make sure you're working with somebody you trust, someone who's certified with those governing bodies that Dorothy mentioned, and that is going to do a proper job, right? Because if you're going to try to save some money and somebody actually makes it worse, and you got to have somebody to come in and fix it later, you might as well just do it right the first time. So closing up here, what is the best way? Do you want people to give you a call? Do you want them to jump on the website? greatwestradon.com, I believe, is your website. Is that right?
Yep. Whichever they're most comfortable with. I always answer the phone. So if you're a phone person, give us a shout. If you want to do everything online, you don't have to ever speak with a human being other than when the guys show up to do the work, if that's what you like to do. You can follow us on social media. We're pretty active on Instagram. We have a Facebook page as well. You can get a bunch of the information. With Radon Action Month coming up, we're going to have a bunch of videos. There's some funny ones and some clips from different shows that talk about radon, which you never would have noticed before, but just stuff like that kind of just educates people in one way or another. So whichever people feel like doing.
Sounds good. Well, I'll link all that in the show notes and your handles on social media there. And I'll definitely be sharing this out with my friends and my clients and colleagues. And hopefully we can all together kind of get the word out there a little bit more and save some lives here.
We are absolutely, Jesse, absolutely. And if I had to say one last thing in closing, Dorothy and me, we are so passionate, again, as I mentioned this before, about just the education of radon. So for those of you that are listening or watching that do have safety moments at work, and do want to do a safety moment or have somebody come and talk about radon just as an education piece for your company, we are always happy to do that. There's some literature on our website that you can download to produce your own safety meeting. or brokerages, whatever. We're always willing to help and just answer questions if that's what you're looking for.
Awesome. And yeah, I guess the one last thing that just jumped in my mind is, you brought it up, Dorothy, like day homes, daycares, schools, those places where your children are spending a great deal of time in the day. If you're a parent, just ask if they've been tested, or
if your parents are watching your kids for you, right? And your parents have never tested their home. It's good for you to know if you grew up in that home. It's good for your kids to not be exposed to high levels if they're now at that home, just wherever they're spending time, like you said.
Awesome. Okay, guys. Well, I know you're so busy, so thank you so much for taking your valuable time to share with me and to and provide all your insight and information to all the viewers to help spread the word about radon and how people can live a healthier life.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse.
Yes, thank you very much.
Take care, guys. Have a great evening.
You too.
Cheers.
Bye.